Good afternoon and welcome to the big show. The big show comes at you a little earlier today than normal, but that's okay. We've got breaking news, and anytime there's breaking news, we like to jump in and get right to it. But believe it or not, the breaking news is about the Pirates. They made a big trade. One of their key players is gone, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But of course, with the big show, we like to do as much as we can do to try and figure out how we can break down the Steelers as they're in training camp. And, well, I think one of the biggest questions that people have asked me, believe it or not, is about whether or not, if you were the Pirates, you would play some of your key players in the preseason. I think this is always a really good topic, because there's a lot of years where if you have a bunch of the same guy, you probably don't need to play them at all in the preseason. But if you have other guys who are new, if you have sort of a side of the ball that has been rebuilt, so to speak, then to me, you probably do want to play your players a little bit more than maybe you would. Now, there's one exception. And the exception is when you have a 41-year-old quarterback that you don't want to get injured. That is the exception, because you've got to figure out just what is going to be the right amount of time to play him in order to make sure that he gets ready and that, he has the ability to just see some live action with the players that he has. So that's where we come up with the topic about Aaron Rodgers and how much should he play in this preseason. As it is, you have 3 preseason games. Clearly, if you're the team that's in the Hall of Fame game, you have 4 preseason games, but you've got 3 preseason games. I think for the most part, everybody kind of agrees that 3rd preseason game is probably best if it's used for, any of the guys that are still trying to make the roster. It gives them an opportunity maybe to one last look or one last time to do things, all that good stuff. But so really you kind of only have one. And I would say, the first preseason game, you probably let Aaron Rodgers play the first series. Just let him get his feet wet. And I would say in that situation, you make sure that you don't really put him in situations where he's going to get sacked or hit. You have him out there throwing some safer passes, just kind of getting his feet wet a little bit. I would, however, play the offensive line 2 or 3 series, maybe even 4 series that first game. Just because I think your offensive line, you really need to get your offensive line together. And this is a team that I think one of the things that we've talked about why you like their chances is because you want their offensive line to be able to go out and be able to play, a couple of preseason games together. I would play Aaron Rodgers 1 series in the first game. Just get his feet wet a little bit, right? The second game against Tampa, I think you have to play him at least like 3 series. You don't want to get him hurt. You don't want to expose him out there to, a bunch of pressures and sacks, but you don't really see a lot of pressures and stuff from teams in the preseason because nobody wants to show their blitzes. They don't want to show those kinds of things. So what they do is their defenses are kind of generic and vanilla and all that other good stuff. Well, at the end of the day, I think when you look at it from that standpoint, if you're smart with Aaron Rodgers, you probably can keep him upright as much as you possibly can. And even if he plays 3 or 4 series, if you're smart, I think you're going to have a good opportunity probably to keep him safe. And I think that's what you're looking to do, obviously. As I said, the Carolina game, which is the last preseason game, I'm always of the belief, in my mind at least, I'm always of the belief that that last preseason game really, really has to be for all the guys that are on the fringe of the roster to have an opportunity to make the team. You know, I think you would, in that last preseason game, play, Mason Rudolph a quarter and a half and then let Will Howard really finish the game. And not play Aaron Rodgers at all. I might think about playing my offensive line for one or two series, because if you think about it, you go from August 21st to September 7th, which is significant amount of time. I mean, you're talking about what, 16, 17, 18 days, something like that, in between when you have a preseason game. So if you break it down even more, August 16th, if you think about it from that standpoint, well, guess what? At that point, August 16th to September 7th is, 25 days or something like that. So you're going to go a long period of time without your guys playing. But again, you only have 3 preseason games. You want to make sure that you are keeping your guys healthy and safe. But when you have a completely rebuilt offense, which is what they have, an offense that is completely rebuilt, a lot of new guys, a lot of new faces. We went over it the other day. 6, maybe 7, depending on the formation, guys are going to be new. And I think that's what's really, really cool. So to me, it's just so important, I think, that they get some time together in live action. It really is. And I think that's one of those things where I look at it from that standpoint, and I just say you really have to be smart, but you want to be smart in a way where you're able to also get a little work done. And I think that's, where we're at with that. I mean, if you think about it, I wouldn't have Aaron Rodgers play more than 1 or 2 series. I wouldn't have him playing much more than that at all, actually. I would just tell you it's just probably not worth it. So I like the fact that they're going to have some options. And I think that one of the things they have to do is basically figure out how much they're going to want to get work for guys. The interesting thing is, I think it's one of those situations where their defense are mostly guys that have played, so you're not going to spend a lot of time. Cam Hayward probably shouldn't play in the preseason. TJ Watt shouldn't play in the preseason. Alex Highsmith shouldn't play in the preseason. Those guys don't need to play. Patrick Queen doesn't need to play in the preseason. I'd get Payton Wilson a little bit of time, but not much. Just because he's stepping into a really large role, I'd get him a little bit of time. I might allow Joey Porter Jr. to play a series or two, just because he's still relatively young. Jalen Ramsey probably doesn't need to play. It's different on defense. You want to get Derek Harmon in there and get him some work, because I think he's going to be an important player, and you want to, let him play against live blocking and tackling. But it's real interesting in my mind, the difference between the offense and the defense. Again, Jonnu Smith, DK Metcalf, they're veteran guys, but they really haven't played with this offense. And so you probably need to play them with Aaron Rodgers. Whatever you do with Aaron Rodgers, if it's 2 series in the first game, 2 series in the second game, okay, that's probably what you should do with DK Metcalf and Jonnu Smith. I think obviously you should play Broderick Jones, assuming he's healthy, and also Troy Fontenot a lot. Zach Frazier, is a guy you could play, maybe even more than you play Aaron Rodgers because he's still relatively young. I'm just saying offense is different than defense. Defense, those guys know what they're doing. They know how to play. You're going to have, a really vanilla defense anyway. So I don't know that you have to necessarily play your guys to say, oh, well, we want to get them to figure it out and all that other stuff. I just don't think that's really the case. I think defense is different than offense completely. And so, there's very few guys on defense that I think you need to play in the preseason. I think you use defense to try and build your depth. You got a lot of guys that are younger or newer or whatever. Get them as many reps as you can possibly get them. That's where we're at, I would say, with how much you should play these guys in the preseason. It feels to me like that's the difference between offense and defense. If Aaron Rodgers was, 41 and he had been with the Steelers for the last, 15, 20 years or whatever, he had played in this offense, I don't think you play him, obviously. You didn't play Ben really in the preseason. I don't think you need to. But I would say from where I sit, that you probably need to play Aaron Rodgers just a little bit, along with some of the other guys. And, interestingly enough, Jaylen Warren to me is probably a guy you don't need to play that much because he played in the offense. He's been around. I know he's stepping into a bigger role, but it's basically the same thing. He's running the football, but Caleb Johnson, I would play him, and I think one of the things that people say is, well, be afraid of injury and all that. And I get that, but a guy could get injured in practice. A guy could get injured. You're going to have, 30 practices before your first game, probably something like that. The entire month of August and the first week of September, you're going to have probably close to 30 practices. And so guys can get injured in practice, especially since in training camp, the Steelers are one of the teams and Mike Tomlin's one of the guys that he still believes that you need to hit a little bit in training camp. So I just look at it from that standpoint. I just tell you, I think it's really important in so many ways for the Steelers to be smart with some of their older guys, but also smart with guys that don't need to play in the preseason. I don't know if Aaron Rodgers is one of those guys or not, but it seems to me like he's a guy who probably needs to play a little bit. So you put him out there and see what he can do. And I think that's what you do with him. On a different note, it's interesting. I was reading a story that was written, I think it was by Brian Batko, about Payton Wilson. And honestly, the kid has an incredible attitude. And he also kind of feels like somebody who was born to be a Steeler. And we've known that. But I love his attitude and some of his quotes that he talks about. He wants to be good. He wants to be somebody who fits, into what the Steelers are looking for. He wants to be that, inside linebacker that, hard hitting and all that other stuff. And, the other thing I like about Payton Wilson, and we probably haven't seen this since Ryan Shazier, but he's a really good cover linebacker. They've had some guys that were good hit, like Landon Roberts was a really good, get up the field and smack you in the mouth kind of, run stopper. Wasn't very good in coverage. Cole Holcomb, a little bit too slow in coverage. If you look at the guys, Patrick Queen, I thought last year struggled in coverage. Payton Wilson, one of the things that it probably sets him apart is the fact that he is somebody that is actually really good in coverage at the inside linebacker position. And you know what? They haven't had a guy like that for a long, long time. But he also basically says that he is going to continue, obviously, to try and be that inside linebacker that is a bit of a hard-hitting guy, gets up inside and, makes tackles that change the game. So he's easy to root for, right? He's definitely easy to root for. I think it'll be interesting to see just how good of a cover linebacker he is. He says basically he can cover any tight end, any running back, and he can do that very, very well. I don't know. To me, we got to see it before we really get that far into it. Game is always on at Archie's. Archie's, home of 80-cent wings, Monday through Thursday, home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. If you get down to Archie's, tell Archie I said hello. Tell him I sent you, and tell him that you are there to taste some of the best wings that you will find. Switching gears to the big news of the day. Switching gears to the big news of the day. Okay. The Pirates made a deal. They traded Ke'Bryan Hayes. Now, there's a couple things here I'll tell you. One, I didn't know if anyone would take Ke'Bryan Hayes because he's an elite fielder, no question. He's a Gold Glove guy. He's one of the best third basemen in the league on defense. But offensively, he's offensive. Offensively, he's offensive. He's not good hitter. He doesn't have power. He doesn't hit for average. You know, his OPS is I think, under 600 now. His slugging percentage is something like 290, something like that. I'm sorry, his on base maybe is 290. He's a guy who has no power. He has 2 home runs. And on top of that, everybody knows he kind of has a chronically bad back. So I wasn't really all that shocked that the return for him was basically a guy who is a relief pitcher on an expiring contract, who's 34 years old, who has no chance of being here with the Pirates next year, and might even be somebody they throw into another deal, right, and flip him somewhere else. Taylor Rodgers. And then they got a minor leaguer, a prospect, Sammy Stafura. In other words, they didn't really get help for now. And, no disrespect to Sammy Stafura, the 9th best prospect in the Reds organization. He's a single A shortstop, another middle infielder. I mean, he's not somebody that will help them for 2 or 3 years, if ever. And if they flip Taylor Rodgers, like many people think they will, what we're really talking about is they basically just said, we're going to move on from Ke'Bryan Hayes' salary. Now, there's something to be said for that. But again, salary dumps are only meaningful if you're going to use that money somewhere else. Are they going to use that money somewhere else? It's a fair question. We know the answer based on the history. Probably not. But I think the biggest thing is Ke'Bryan Hayes is gone. And now, for the rest of the year, they'll have Jared Triola playing third. I mean, I think they managed to find a guy who's reasonably a close proximity defensively, but he's maybe a worse hitter than Ke'Bryan Hayes. But Ke'Bryan Hayes was a number 1 draft choice, and he never got better at the plate. Now, we could sit here and say, he's got chronic back injuries and back problems, and that has held him back. He claims it hasn't been the case, that hasn't been the problem. But the bottom line is they traded him, and they traded him within the division, which I found to be very, very interesting. Because if you look at the division, the Reds are a very similar team to the Pirates. And I would tell you, you know what? So are the Brewers in terms of their small market teams that allegedly don't have a lot of money to spend, and have to be very, very, frugal and really, really watch their finances and all that stuff. But the Reds and the Brewers have sort of operated in a way where it kind of feels like they believe that they are trying to actually at some point win. Now, again, they're not great, but they're 10 games better than the Pirates. And they actually are within shouting distance. If you look at where they're at right now, they're within shouting distance. They're 4 games over 500. And if you look at the wild card race, they're only 3 games out. So it's pretty clear getting a guy like a Brian Hayes, even though he's not going to probably help them much at the plate, he's a professional, a Gold Glove fielder. He's going to make them a better team defensively. He's going to give them an opportunity probably to compete in a way that they really haven't competed at that position. In other words, it's a move that the Reds are making because the Reds think they're in it a little bit. They went and got a major league player, somebody they think can help them this year. And I don't think that should go unrecognized or unnoticed. The Pirates, on the other hand, dump salary. You can say whatever you call it, whatever you want to call it. This move does absolutely zero for the Pirates. Doesn't make them better this year, doesn't make them better down the road. They took a flyer and a pipe dream on a Class A minor leaguer. I guess, maybe 2 years from now, 3 years from now, he'll make us eat crow. But I have a hard time believing, I'm very skeptical, having a hard time believing this guy's really going to be able to get it done for them. So I just feel like it's one of those things where Brian Hayes, to me, never panned out. He was actually drafted by Neil Huntington. So you can't put this completely on Ben Cherington, but they've had him for 6 years, and he's never gotten better. He had one flash where he was getting better and starting to hit the ball, and then they went out and fired the hitting coach that helped him because, he was going outside the organizational philosophy. I mean, you can say whatever you want to say, but that was just the dumbest thing ever. If you're that thin-skinned, then maybe, I don't know, just maybe you're too thin-skinned to be a general manager. I mean, if you look at it, his slugging percentage is 290. I was right. He's hitting 236. His OPS, I was right, is under 600. So it's one of those things where it's going to be interesting to see what comes next. What comes next? Now that the first shoe has dropped, I don't think there's any question Isaiah, Kiner, Falefa, and Tommy Pham will be gone. And those are deals that, those are deals that really don't mean a whole lot to me anyway. Guys on expiring contracts, veteran guys who just aren't very good. Although Tommy Pham has hit really well recently, to the point where I think there's value in him. Isaiah Kiner, Falefa, here's the thing. If you're a contender and you need a utility out infielder, or you want a veteran guy, maybe your second baseman isn't very good, or even your shortstop, and you want somebody that's going to be able to hit a little bit better, drive in some runs, he's actually a good piece. So I think those two guys will definitely be gone. But the trade deadline, in my mind, doesn't start for the Pirates unless they're going to be willing to part with either David Bednar or Mitch Keller. And I would even say, to a lesser degree, Dennis Santana. Those guys will bring you something back. Those guys have value. And if you trade those guys, you then probably are going to be getting guys who are coming back that are prospects, who are probably going to help you who are AAA prospects that are guys who are right on the verge of being major leaguers, players who you have a chance of getting something out of. That's what you're looking for if you make a trade. You want to make your team better either now or for next year and beyond. I think trading guys like Pham and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. I mean, the other guy I can't figure out why they wouldn't trade is Spencer Horwitz. Why not? What is he doing for you? I think that's the key for me. That's where it is for me. This is a trade they made that is basically a salary dump. And I don't think they made themselves better. Maybe they didn't make themselves worse, but I don't think they made themselves better. And when you make a trade, I think you want to try and make yourself a little better, especially a team that's trying to rebuild. Now, what the interesting thing is, I was talking to somebody today who said unequivocally the Pirates are not interested in rebuilding. Well, okay. If that's the case, then I guess you should keep Mitch Keller. And here's the thing, I'm okay with that. Keep Mitch Keller. Keep Bednar. Keep Santana, right? You got Jared Jones coming back. This Ashcraft looks like he's a real player for you. You still have Bubba Chandler down there. You can bring him up, and that's the other guy they're going to trade, no question, is Andrew Heaney. Who cares? At the end of the day, at one point he probably had value. Now he's a guy that they're going to throw into a trade and dump him or whatever. And Bubba Chandler to fill his spot. But here's the thing. If you're not going to be committed to a rebuild, okay? If you're not going to be committed to a rebuild, then you need to go spend some money this offseason. Go sign some guys that can help you win. Go sign guys who can help you win. Period. And when you do that, then you'll convince me that that you shouldn't, that not trading guys at the deadline was the right move. But if your offseason is, dumpster diving for a couple of veterans to fill some holes like you did this year, what are we really talking about? Another year of just spinning their wheels and hoping that their pitching staff's good enough to cover up all the issues that they have with the bats. That, to me, is the worst approach they could possibly take. So, in conclusion, I'm okay if they really believe they're not going to go out and rebuild. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. As long as in the offseason, they're going to actually go spend some money. But if it's another offseason of dumpster diving for veteran guys who aren't good enough just to kind of fill holes, I'm not interested in it. Rebuild. Tear the whole damn thing down and let's start over. That's really what it comes down to for me. It just is one of those situations where this is a season off season where it can't be you're going to try and do both things. Save money, keep this pipe dream alive that you've got enough prospects to, without rebuilding, reloading your roster and holding on to guys like Bednar and Mitch Keller. I mean, to me, if you're going to keep them, remember, I'm completely okay with that. But if you're going to keep them, then what you better do is in the offseason, go spend some money and make sure that you're making your team better for next year. That's it for me. I think I'll be back Friday. If not, I'll be back Monday. Tomorrow, like 7 o'clock, we're going to have a reaction show to the trade deadline. Hopefully, there'll be a lot better news or more exciting news than what we just went through today.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.